Now, I don't know if she would call her work witchy, but she's so in line with spirituality and just embodiment. And I think what she has to say is really important. So I wanted you all to meet her. This is my friend, Heather. Heather Woodruff is a nutritional practitioner. She would be what you would call a gut guru. She takes the idea of spirituality and her nutritional background, and she caters to the individual person. Now, most of the people she works with are women, and I just am so excited to have Heather Woodruff here with me today. We're going to be talking about, I guess, just like health and mindfulness, and I'd love to have you share about like the whole body-mind connection.
Hi, Jody. Thanks for having me.
Hi, love. Did I miss anything in your bio?
No, you know what? And there's like, there's some letters behind my name, certified nutritional practitioner, registered GAPS practitioner, but like digestion guru was somebody once introduced me as that because it was just way easier to say than like all of the things. So yeah, that's like what I do is I support women on their sacred gut healing journeys. And I think why we're so aligned, is partially because like I do think those journeys are so sacred. Like our health journeys are so sacred, but we often just get really caught up in the physical aspect of it, and we don't take a moment to pause and really move through all of that in a more sacred way and learn from what's happening to our body and listen to it. She is speaking to us, like all of these signs and symptoms and things are just her way of speaking to us.
Well, and I think that Digestion Guru says so much more than the letters behind your name. And I respect them. I respect the knowledge you have and what you bring. And I do want you to share what the GAPS certified means for everyone. But I think I would say I feel that you can have all the education you want, but if you're not connecting on a soul level with the women who are coming to you, sometimes as a last resort because they have tried so many things and they're still have this inflammation in their bodies and this uncomfortableness, you know, the heartness of what you do, I think really speaks.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, not think, I know that our our medical system that is currently like I've known it's been so broken for so long. I know it was broken when I went through my own digestive healing journey and like tried to go that route, as so many women do. They go to their doctors, they go to a gastroenterologist, all of these things, and often don't get a lot of answers to what they're working through. Like it's a very broken system for aspects like that. If I break a leg, there's nowhere else I'd rather be than like with that system. But like for something like this, when we have these chronic like health things, our doctors aren't trained in nutrition. They're not trained in our food. They don't even really go there. Maybe they will a little bit, but it is when women are coming to me, they've already kind of exhausted those roots. And in Chinese medicine, they refer to our gut, our digestive tract as the earth, as our earth. It's like our core, our center of our well-being. And, when we start healing and really putting some like healing love and attention and focus in that area, we see that ripple out into the rest of our body, into areas that seemingly don't seem related to our digestive tract, but everything is related to all parts of our body. So like all like in terms of like a whole holistic approach, like it's all there. And so when we start healing the gut, we'll see like skin clear, we'll see hormones rebalance, we'll see like mental health and like anxiety like pieces start to kind of rebalance. And then like brain fog clear. That's like one of the first symptoms that I see clear with the ladies that I work with is this brain fog piece. And you think like, but it's your gut. How is that like, like I use those letters. I use the wisdom from like those letters that I have on the end of my name, but then I also use the wisdom of our ancient ancestors, with that's like my work is deeply rooted, like with food recommendations and things, is deeply rooted in ancestral eating. That has just always spoken to me very, very clearly. I feel like when we follow those guidelines in terms of like, could we grow, raise, harvest, or hunt? Like keeping that kind of in our frame of mind when we're making food choices, then whatever's trendy at the time can easily be like picked apart or not at all. Like how eggs were demonized. Like they're going to cause high cholesterol for like so many years, but it's like, could I grow, raise, harvest, or hunt those? Heck yeah. So let's like ignore whatever is coming out from the science world on eggs being bad for us. And now we know that's not true, or we always knew. I feel like we always know these things, but sometimes our heads get in the way with all of the noise that's out there in the health world. And, it's those are things that keep me grounded with all of the noise, is like really staying deeply rooted in that ancestral way of eating and healing and all of that.
I like what you said about eggs. I have to share this with you. My grandmother, my dad's mother, she would say all the time, there's everything in an egg.
Mhm.
And it's one of the staples I still eat. It works really well with my body.
Yeah.
I love that mantra. Could you gather it, hunt it, or grow it?
Yeah.
What a way to stay grounded in holistic eating.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a motto that, or just like something that I really like every time you're in a grocery store, whenever you're buying something that comes in a package or a can or whatever, I always like check the back, with that in mind. And like, would my great grandmother recognize this as food? I used to say grandmother, but we have to go back a little bit further because our grandmothers even kind of got caught up and unfortunately in the process we had to have to go back to our great grandmothers with it. And would she recognize this as food? Like, and oftentimes even in like the so-called healthy things and products, there's a no. There's like there's a lot of ingredients in there, and our bodies love simple, our bellies love simple. And so when we see things like a protein powder or something with like 1,000 ingredients that we can't pronounce, like it's like, no, it's a hard no for me. So yeah, it's a way to stay grounded for sure.
So I'd love to hear your personal journey, how you came from becoming a nutritionist and how it shifted for you into this place of spiritual eating, really,
Hmm.
and like embodied eating and somatically understanding what your body's saying through your relationship to the stomach and how that all came to be.
As a child, I had all of these symptoms that were gut related, but definitely were gut related at the time. And I had chronic eczema, and I had extreme tonsillitis where I had got my tonsils taken out along with my adenoids when I was like 5 because it was so inflamed. They were so inflamed.
Do you see my face?
Yeah.
Sorry, earbud Coven. Like my eyes just bugged out of my head because I would never have made that connection. I had chronic tonsillitis
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
kid.
The
Oh, I'm
doctor,
gonna want to know about this. Oh my goodness, this
yeah.
is so fun.
And it's like a lot of it is like our tonsils are like a filter for the immune system. Like it's a big piece of our immune system. And 75% of our immune system is in the gut. So like there's the piece that kind of connects it there. And like the doctor said, like when he did remove my tonsils, they fell apart in his hands. Like they were literally just like in pieces. And I think about like, oh my gosh, I was this 5-year-old girl that like with these tonsils that were like so inflamed that they were like no one made any connection to digestive health or even food or anything like that. Like even with the chronic eczema, we were given just corticosteroid steroid creams to slather on like long term. We know those aren't good for long term. But then in my early 20s, it actually evolved into these chronic digestive issues. And I went to like doctors, I had abdominal ultrasounds, I had lab work, I had stool tests, and everything kept coming back normal, normal, normal. And finally, one of the doctors that I was seeing was like, well, in these circumstances, like we diagnose this as IBS. IBS is actually a diagnosis of exclusion. And what that means is that we can't figure out exactly what's wrong with you. So we need to classify you as something to fit you in a nice, tidy box for our medical minds. And this isn't me being cheeky. This is actually like what it is called in the medical world, is a diagnosis of exclusion.
I'm going to just stop here, and I want to make that really, really clear, because I know that some of the Earbud Coven who are tuning in, they have these chronic things. And to understand that I'm going to repeat it back to see if I got it right. There are different diagnoses that you can get when you go to an enterologist, which is your gut doctor.
Gastroenterologist.
When you go to a gastro doc, and when they cannot put you into a box, you get a diagnosis of exclusion, which means we've excluded things like celiac. We've excluded things like
Crohn's and colitis. Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to call you IBS. We're just going to say that you have an irritation.
Yeah.
And we're just going to call you, we don't know why. And it sounds like they're saying we can see their symptoms. We don't know the core cause of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to put this label on you because we like putting stickers on things and labeling things and sorting them and organizing them. But it's not actually telling you anything about how to get well.
And I don't know, I think it's hard for anyone to say, let alone doctors in the conventional medical world. Like, I do not know is a really hard statement to state there. P.S. The autoimmune also gut related due to that. Like I was saying, 75% of your digestive tract or your immune system is in your digestive tract. So really what your body is determining what is friend or foe happens there. So if something's inflamed or like off balance there and your body gets really confused, it starts attacking the thyroid. It can start attacking the intestinal walls. It can start attacking, all of these different places where there's like autoimmune that shows up can originate in the gut.
I'm just dipping my toe into traditional Chinese medicine with a mentor. And that's one of the things I've been learning is that your stomach decides what is good and what is bad. It separates, like not your stomach, but like your stomach and your digestive tract. I think it's the small intestine. It's the one that sends things up and things down. And some of your energy goes upwards. And I'm totally probably simplifying this way too much and not giving it its credit, but that our gut is what decides what's good for us, what is to be eliminated and what to keep. That whole decision making and discernment happens in that system. So it's interesting to look at that from an emotional point of view and a thought point of view, as well as from the actual physiology point of view.
Yeah, there's a reason why we have these like kind of like old sayings of like, oh, I have a gut feeling or butterflies in our tummy and like all of those kind of things. And I think for me, in terms of like the spiritual aspect of it, in terms of like trying to like listen to like your soul whispers and things like that, like when you're trying to like follow your gut intuition, it is really hard to trust it when your gut feels like bloated and inflamed and sick all the time, right? Like it's really hard to like really trust your body. It can feel like your body is working against you, when the reframe is always like, well, what is my body trying to tell me? Like there's different mantras that I give my clients. And one of them is like, my body and belly are so wise and it is always healing, So it's like, it's a way to just be like, it is wise. It knows how to heal. It just is speaking to me. And I just need to really pause and listen more and listen better. And a lot of the work that I do is really helping women to understand that, help them shift the mindset around what their body is telling them Because often women know, like I watch women tap into their body as we start working together or when they go through one of my programs, and they're able to like make their own choices with food and decide what feels good in their body with that.
What I'm hearing is instead of a dogmatic program, you're encouraging women to really be embodied and tune in to what signals they're getting
Mhm.
and making their own decisions on their health, what they're putting in their body, how they're choosing to eat and choosing to heal themselves.
Really get that. So that's that. Listen to your body. And it's like, I don't hear her. What's happening? She is not saying anything. She is, but just, she's not used to being heard. So it's when you do start listening, she speaks louder and clearer. And I've seen that so many times. The women in my programs or the women that I work with is that like when we start listening and really putting that attention there that she does start speaking and it does get clearer. So that's where the guidance can help. That's where I work with just getting people to that place. I don't want people to need me forever. They shouldn't. It's helpful to have like coaches and support and people like walking beside you on your it's helpful to have your team when you're working through a lot of this. Yeah. So I had, in that whole like realm of like me doing that, I ended up finally getting an appointment with this naturopathic doctor who, by the way, is still my naturopathic doctor to this day. I've been with her for like 20 years because she's amazing. But she was the first person in that whole journey to be like, what are you eating? Nobody had asked me like before then, what are you eating? The doctor told me to lay off coffee. That was like the one nutrition advice that he gave me. And I was like, but I don't drink coffee.
And that's so interesting because you were going to him for gut problems and they weren't looking at what you were putting inside your digestive tract.
I know it's really mind blowing, actually. At the time I was so mad, and for years afterwards, I actually was really mad and frustrated. Now I realize it's a broken system. Even the best medical schools on the planet, like doctors get maybe 45 minutes of nutrition training in all of those 7, 8+ years.
That blows my mind that they don't.
So that's like the broken piece there. And she was the first one. And in that book, she handed me a book, which was Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. I ended up reading it from cover to cover. I have it up here. Like it's so huge. And not that I recommend everyone read it cover to cover. You don't have to. I think when I read it cover to cover, it was actually just like a remembering for me that I was like meant to do this work. I started transforming the way I eat. And within like days, I started notice after like years, after like that whole process of going through doctors and stuff took years. And within a few days, I was feeling better. And then within a few weeks, I was feeling like amazing. And I was like, why wasn't I told this? And the whole process, though, I found like so empowering. Beautiful gift from Mama Earth. This food is so healing, especially if you prepare it in certain ways, like the way our ancestors did with like meat stocks and fermented foods and like getting into these like really old, like ancient preparation methods. They are medicine. This is like such medicine for us. So from there is when I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to become a nutritionist. I think this is what I'm going to do.
That when you were reading the book, it was like a remembering.
Mhm.
So you are in your purpose, you're in your power, this is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, it felt really good. I actually didn't realize it at the time. My husband was like, God, you haven't put down that book in like a week. I was like, I know, it's so fascinating. For me, it was like my soul was just, there you are. That's what you're supposed to be doing in this life is this. Interesting for me now. Like I realize now that like that was a remembering, like I call it a remembering. I didn't realize it at the time. It was just
I
like,
don't think we ever do at the time. I don't think the magic works like that. Just personally, I think that when we're in flow and we're having an awakening or we're having a moment that we look back and see as a pivotal one in our lives. We don't see it in the moment. It's always that hindsight being 2020 where we look back and we go, "Oh." Right. Because we're just, this might sound rude, but we're just little tiny humans, right? Our little human brain can never, I don't think, process all of the layers and the vastness and the macrocosm of what is going on a physical and spiritual level at any time. And if we did peek behind the curtain too much, we'll go insane.
All my heart. Had I not gone through my journey, I would still be, like doing the job that did not light up my soul. Like, and my digestive tract, even though I've done so much healing on it, is still my guiding post. Like it is where I like really embody and feel things when things are out of alignment.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, a very like simple example of it is that like I have this injury right now that I'm going through, and my digestion, it's not a mess, but it's definitely temperamental. Like while the stress of going through, it goes a little temperamental when things are just like out of alignment, when the body is feeling things and when things are like that, like when things are just out, when things are funky. My digestive tract speaks, or if I'm not getting enough sleep, my digestive tract will speak to me and be like, hey, what's happening? So old Heather, like previous to all of this, would have been like, oh, what's happening here? And like, I know the food that I eat right now is like exactly what my body loves. Like I'm very in tune with like what I'm eating in that capacity. But oftentimes our life can kind of go like if I'm pushing myself a little bit too hard, which I think is what's happening with this injury right now. When I'm pushing myself when I'm supposed to be resting with it, when I have scheduled like too many things in a week for, my business or other, like my digestive tract will tell me. Everyone has their tells. And for me, I'm very much, I feel it in my body. I feel in my body when things are out of alignment and it'll speak to me that way. And so I know it's my guiding post. It's my way of being like, all right, what's happening here? What's going on here? What do I need to shift or pivot or pause with to get back into alignment?
So if you were coaching a client and they came to you and they said, okay, Heather, I'm eating the things that are good
Mm-hmm.
and everything is not right. My digestion is off, my body is off, I don't feel right, but I'm doing the things. How would you coach them through that? Like, how can you help them frame it up? How would you give that wisdom to your client?
First, I always look at the food because even if people think they're eating very well, there's always pieces I feel like that are just the things you think are healthy but not healthy. I still believe very much in physically supporting this temple of ours that we have here. The food we put into our digestive tract does matter. So I always like go there first. In the early stages of my nutrition coaching world, I was all about the food, 99% all about the food. So powerful. This is what's going to heal everyone. And then I really started tapping in and noticing that that wasn't always the case. That sometimes like you could be doing all of the right things and something else here is amiss. And that's where I started diving more into the gut brain connection and started exploring that with clients, exploring that in myself. And now I'm like a 50-50, pretty much. Like 50% is like about the food, but like 50% is also about different practices of supporting the nervous system, supporting your body, making your body feel like it is safe enough to heal. Because if our body doesn't feel safe, it's not going to heal. It will be in this heightened state of fight or flight. And one of the first things that gets shut down in fight or flight when we're in the stress mode is our digestive tracts. Our digestive tracts get like very much suppressed during that time. So it's a big piece. I notice it in my clients and women going through my programs of like really embody that and really take that in. They just heal so much faster. They heal faster. They heal more deeply. They just go through that journey so much differently than the women that are just focused on the food. I feel like the women that are on the food, they constantly like, oh, I feel better. Oh, wait, now something shifted. What's happening? It's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back more approach with it. I call it the gut brain nourishing practices and work and different aspects with that. And that's what I've seen I've been doing this work for like a decade now. And that's just like what I've seen in myself and with humans that I work with. You had asked about my GAP certification, which is gut and psychology syndrome, is what that stands for. That stands for, and it's a special designation. It was a training that I got several years ago. It was created by a doctor in the UK, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, and it's a digestive healing protocol designed to heal the brain through the digestive tract. So she specifically created it. Initially, it was for like children and adults with autism, ADHD, people on the spectrum, people with bipolar, anything like that. And it's just really powerfully healing. You're just putting a ton of medicine in there. It's a complicated or can feel like a bit complicated to follow the protocol. And usually people need to kind of be exact with it to really see results and do it for some time. It's something I have like a whole membership site for people wanting to do that, but it's really good for people with bipolar or autoimmune conditions or like severe chronic and colitis. That is like a beautiful way to go. But with my other programs, with people that don't need to go quite that extreme, I pull like really powerful healing elements from that protocol and I use it with my people even over here, just heal so much faster. And it's very ancestral based. Like I don't think she realized it when she created it, but it's so ancestral, like with what is being created in that program. So I've seen clients where they felt like they'd done everything, do this and be like, oh, there we go. Okay, now we're healing. A missing piece is always that gut brain connection and restoring. It's definitely not a conversation that's happening in the doctor's offices. And I see it even in holistic worlds and digestive health worlds where it's being missed in gut healing protocols of really prioritizing the time and energy and capacity for different practices. And they can be simple. You don't have to sit like for 2 hours a day on a mountaintop meditating. Like, there's really simple practices to allow your body to feel safe enough to heal.
It's interesting the disconnect that is just in our culture in general between physical health and mental health. We often forget that our brain is actually living inside our body. Our emotions are living inside our body. They're not actually separate. They're all in the same container.
Yeah, we store emotions in our body that can manifest out into symptoms. That happens a lot with through the collective. There is actual scientific research showing that traumas can transfer through DNA, through lineages. So there's sometimes stuff that we experience like in that way that we have no idea what it is. This is where talk therapy is good, but sometimes it only takes you so far. And it's like all about the body. A few years ago, I actually did a trauma healing program because it's aspects in the gut brain practices that I do now that are very trauma informed because we all have trauma. And this doesn't have to be like a big T, though people have this where it's like an abuse or an assault or something like that. They're little T traumas and often our body doesn't really know the difference and it reacts the same way with what's happening when it comes to those stressors that are stored in the body. So doing a trauma-informed practice where it's helping to release aspects of that is just really powerful for physical healing as well. People think it's for like, oh, it's going to make me more emotionally stable, and it probably will, but it's also to release what's stuck in the body. And that can happen with digestive tract. Like, and I think about it with women with chronic constipation, or the other end where it's like chronic diarrhea, like they're just, what is your body like trying to release so badly? And what is your body like really holding on to? It's something that I keep in mind as I'm working with my ladies. It's something that like I intuitively will pick up on things and ask questions. There's the wisdom with the letters behind your name, but then there's just also the intuition that kind of comes in from just talking with someone or being in their presence. I'm sure you experience that a lot as well.
Because I do shamanic work, I do spiritual work, I do witchcraft and spells, but I do know the idea of, how do I want to say this? because I've done a lot of therapy. I've had good
Yes,
therapists. I really believe in
me
therapy. I
too.
believe in all kinds of therapy. I do believe in our medical system, although it is not perfect.
Hmm.
I found for myself, though, the methods that are being used for PTSD, I make me not want to go to therapy. So I have had
Yeah, yeah,
more healing
absolutely.
happen through spiritual work, through shamanic techniques, through somatic body work. I have become more stable and less reactive doing that style of work than what Western medicine has for me. And yeah, I'm super interested about the idea of healing trauma through food.
Hmm.
So now you know a little bit about this, but maybe I'll share because I used to be, quote unquote, have IBS. I lived on Imodium. I lived on it. I ate it all the time. I couldn't get through a day without digestive upset. And I didn't even know my body was talking to me. I knew I was stressed. I was in a very unbalanced and abusive relationship. And I was very trapped there for a long time. And so fast forward, I had been separated for about 6 or 8 months, and like I do have a dairy intolerance, so I ended up eating something contaminated, and that will make me ill. So I was experiencing that, and I went to find some Imodium, and it was gone. I hadn't bought any. That was weird for me because I always have it. Like I needed it to get through a shift at work. And I had to sit there and think my IBS left, it evaporated
Hmm.
when that relationship,
Hmm.
well, more that person stopped living in my environment. So it was very apparent to me that that was actually the root of what had gone on. And I had done it. I like nothing
Yeah.
me, my stomach calm, just the churning. And it's interesting that you were saying when, when things show up in your life, you go back to your gut because it acts up. And the same thing happens. And there are specific emotions I find that those IBS style symptoms are attached to. And I do make the connection that is attached to feelings of trauma. And actually to be really visual about it, like the idea that if I were to run, if I needed to go into flight, I would dump everything in my digestive. I am lighter.
Yeah.
And it's definitely attached to a flight response.
Yeah. And what powerful like awareness to have when we start really getting into that, when we start realizing. And there's the science shows actually that like 60% of the people with a diagnosis of depression or anxiety to varying degrees has also an IBS diagnosis. We know what that means now, but
The undiagnosed symptoms.
yeah. And I think that's actually higher because like almost everyone I work with has varying degrees of depression, anxiety, or just brain fog or whatever, because not everyone for either of those. So I think that's actually much higher. And so
So I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to talk about women because it seems that tends to be your client base. Do you find that we tend to walk around chronically upset and not even tuning into that? Like you're saying that a lot of people have this brain fog, a lot of your clients have like bits of anxiety or bits of depression, and whether or not they have a diagnosis, is that like almost like a cultural problem with women? And I'm singling them out because that tends to be your client base. So I don't want you to answer to a demographic you're not treating on a regular basis. I'm not trying to exclude anyone.
normal, not necessarily healthy. I feel like the word normal gets thrown around, and just because something is common doesn't mean it's actually the ideal way that your body operates.
So what I'm hearing is that they're normalizing symptomatic conditions.
Absolutely. Like I've had lots of women say, I had no idea how tired I was until my energy started rising again. Because oftentimes when our like digestive tract is really bogged up with toxins and things, our body processing that, and it's a lot of work. And we're just the energy just like drains. And a lot of women are like, I had no idea that I was operating on such a depleted level until I actually got it back. And it was like, whoa, or like the brain fog clears. Like, I didn't even know I had brain fog until it cleared. And I realized I'd been operating with this foggy brain for months, years, decades, like in some circumstances for women. And I think we push through. I do. I think we've gotten to this place of just ignore our bodies. And I think it's coming back. I'm seeing this resurgence of women really feeling into their bodies a lot more. I feel like, especially just within the last like 5 years or so, like I think it's getting better than it used to be. I just told this story to a girlfriend recently of my grandmother who told me when pregnant with my daughter, she was like, I remember when I was in labor with your mom, I went and milked the cows that morning. So like my grandmother was in labor with my mom and still went and milked like 10 cows that morning. And it's like, whoa. And it's like, holy, no one, like, it made like a lot of sense of like the unpacking that needs to happen for our generation to stop, to try not to do it all, to really, to hone in and listen to, like, should she be milking? No, she should have been like resting, maybe moving in like a more like sacred rhythmic way. No, yeah, yeah,
Because if my grandmother didn't do it, it didn't get done.
yeah, yeah,
If you didn't, and there are times in my life when I have needed to push through and I would have a mantra like, I can do anything for a year. Like I can do some pretty exhausting things for a year. I'm trying to live more in balance, but I bet you if no one else milked those cows, then you're gonna come home from the hospital with a newborn babe and half your herd's gonna have mastitis
yeah,
and your milk's gonna be soured and you're not gonna have any money to
yeah.
support this babe.
Yeah, yeah. It's so, and you're right. There's that, who else will do this? They're like, I have to do it all and without complaints. I feel like that was the thing. That was the piece, like with that era. I was like, you do this. Like, I come from this lineage of like farm women who like you do this without complaints. You have the kids, you milk the cows, you work the garden, and like all of the things without complaints. And I see that. I see how I've carried that and worked through it. I'm still working through it. I feel like that's a whole different journey, but I see it out in the world always with women, with our women for sure. I think that got off track of what you were asking me, but
That's okay. It's a very interesting conversation. To find you.
yeah, a 5 morning rituals for gut health and healing. And it dives into ancestral food in there, and we dive into some sacred gut brain practices within there as well. Why I love this, like I specifically created it that you don't need to wake up at 4 a.m. to do any of these practices. They're so simple. Our body and our belly love simple. I say would maybe add on a couple of minutes to your morning schedule. So they're all really simple, but really powerful.
Oh, Heather, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming and talking to us. I love this so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I could talk to you forever as well.
We're supposed to only be a half hour or so. I'm sure we've gone over. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's so much beautiful information in here.
Yeah. Cut out what you feel. Fearless, like, we'll just cut this out. She went on a tangent about farm wives. Like,
I like that farm life stuff. It's interesting to me because I come from farm people too, so it's very similar. Mhm.
yeah. And like my grandma talks often about like the poverty of farm life as well, like this not having enough food and like this worry around food. And I think that's where her brain was, even with it. She was just like, oh my gosh, like I have to milk these cows or else we don't have food. Like after I give birth to this baby, like what is happening? So,
And my ancestors, they did this too. They They never had enough food, but they would always include whoever was there. So there was food scarcity, but abundant hoarding. You see that in our culture now. Like we have so much, but there's this hoarding about it, right? There's this response where everyone is so much in a scarcity set where they hoard. And my grandparents would laugh about, oh yeah, that was the last meal we thought we'd ever had, but so-and-so drove all the way from the other farm. So like, of course we're going to feed them.
Yeah.
Right? Like they never didn't feed you.
Yeah.
If they had the one loaf of bread, they would divide it with you.
Yeah.
They never didn't feed you.
Yeah. I know my grandma talks often about how like people would drop off their kids with her all the time, and she already had 5 kids. And like, so she'd be like, okay, someone go and kill a chicken. We're going to need a whole chicken for lunch today. Like it's
for lunch. But could you imagine cooking a whole chicken, like plucking it for lunch?
For lunch, right?
Like I'm like struggling, like this whole week I've been struggling like with the boys because they eat so much. I'm like, you need more food? Like just eat something.
I know. I'm like, oh,
I'm like, I don't know what's in the fridge. I hope you can find a lunch.
Yeah.
Like,
figure it out.
There's apples way in the back.
Right? And my grandma had this gift, like we would show up sometimes unannounced, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'll put lunch out then. Like she didn't know we were sudden. The table is full of, I'm like, what?
Farm women do that. And but I think they cooked holistically. Like when I was at home, I had some time off recently with the kids. So I was home and I was cooking, and it was like there was always like a pot of something. There was always cold cuts of something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this week worked Monday, Tuesday instead of cooking. So I was trying to balance working and cooking, and it seems like there's not enough food this week just because I haven't been like it's weird. It's weird for them.
Finding the balance, right? Like such a wild time. Our mental health matters. Like our mental health with it all really does matter. And like our lives are just different. Like, you know, for our grandmothers, that was a responsibility, whether they wanted it or not. Like that comes up a lot for me, actually, a lot as well about just like not having a choice. And like that's what they did like all day. And now it's like I run 2 businesses. I homeschool my daughter.
But your grandmother wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Her business was, it was hearth keeping.
Yeah.
So like I can do like, I could hearth keep all day long. I'm good at it. I can like sew and bake and garden and do all the things.
Amazing.
But in the place I am now, and I'm processing this week. I'm just going to process right here with you, Heather. I'm good at it. I can like sew and bake and garden and do all the things.
Amazing.
But in the place I am now, and then I'm processing this week. I'm just going to process right here with you, Heather.
And for those who don't know, IBS is a diagnosis. It's like,
just take a breath, just blah, blah, blah. This will be edited. I love you so much.
Like, oh my gosh, I say it like 1,000 times a day.
So what I'm